Zykeivous Walker is back at Auburn. What will his role look like in 2023?
Welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
Oh, and thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine as we discuss sports-related topics that are of interest to people in the Southwest Georgia area. Let me remind you, if you're watching on Facebook today, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. We're also attempting to build our YouTube presence, so log on to YouTube and hit the subscribe button for us, and that will help us out. Our guest today is someone that I have never met in person, but has been a big help in getting this podcast up and running through his advice. Please welcome to the program my friend Zac Blackerby, the host of Locked On Auburn.
Yeah, Tim, it's kind of crazy. This is our first time chit-chatting. I've known you for a while with the amount that we text and talk through other ways. So good to meet you.
Zac, as you know, through the conversations that we've had, this Integrity Sports Podcast focuses on related topics in our little corner of the world here in Southwest Georgia. And we have a lot of Auburn fans in our area, being only about an hour and a half away from Auburn. But before we get into the specifics of Zacchevious Walker, who's our local kid that's playing there at Auburn, I want to talk about the Brian Harsin dismissal and where the program was at that time as compared to where we're at now under Hugh Freeze. Give us kind of the Cliff Notes version of that.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels totally different, right? I mean, you think back to when Harsin was let go, there's a lot of questions of, how is Auburn going to get out of this? I mean, you spent the last 2 years and probably the last year or so of the Gus Malzahn era really not winning the recruiting battles that you needed to, not developing players that you did get as much as you needed to. And as far as the Brian Harsin era is concerned, how much should he really care about NIL and making sure the program had money to attract the best players? And it almost seemed like he was defiantly against NIL at times, which is obviously concerning when it comes to building, a talented roster. So fast forward to Hugh Freeze being hired, and the first thing that he does once he takes a job is to call all of the committed kids that were in Auburn's 2023 class, because he realized how important it was for Auburn to win, because you need talented guys. And so, he started recruiting then, and I don't think he stopped, and I don't think he's really slept a whole lot since then. And then, fast forward to the spring, it seems like he's happy with a couple of the position groups, but this roster still has a long way to go. And with the portal happening, opening up again this weekend, Tim, curious to see how all of that transpires, because during that first portal window, Hugh Freeze did a lot, totally changed the offensive line, added a lot of beef to that defensive line, attracted guys that already entered the portal, like Zacchevious Walker and Landon King back. I'm excited to see what he does this weekend.
Zac, let me give you just a little background on Zacchevious as a high school kid. He was highly touted with offers from pretty much every SEC and ACC school. Had Kirby Smart fly in a couple of times on a helicopter. And I think most people in this area felt like he would either be a Georgia guy or a Florida State guy. And then out of nowhere, that last week before signing day, he comes out that he's going to sign with Gus Malzahn and Auburn. Fast forward a little bit, he gets over there and just has a tremendous breakout year as a freshman. Not a starter, but got a lot of snaps, several tackles, 2 sacks as a freshman. Really did well. And then Gus heads down to Central Florida. We bring in the Harsin regime and just didn't see much from Zacchevious at all. I'm curious to hear from a guy that covers Auburn on a daily basis. Do you feel like that's because of the lack of rotation up front that Harsin and his staff had?
Yeah, they didn't play a lot of guys. They played, there'd be times where they play like 19 guys on defense in a game, which is crazy. And that's crazy. You're going to see this staff play, 8 or 9 guys just on the defensive line. And obviously we think Zacchevious Walker will certainly be a part of that. And I think Zacchevius fits in well in this defensive line room because this staff likes guys that can kind of do a little bit of both. This Ron Roberts led defense, coming over from Baylor, they like to do a bunch of different types of fronts. And Zykeivous Walker, that you pointed out, played a lot of defensive end in high school. He's huge. He's huge, and he can slide in and play a little 4-eye, play the 3 technique if you need him to, and also play that true 5-tech defensive end role as well. And I think he can be effective in rushing the passer and collapsing the pocket, as well as using that size to kind of stymie the run game that he's going to see throughout this season. So I think he's going to be a solid 2-deep type rotation player, but I think that means a lot more under this staff than it did over the last 2 years.
So midway through last year, Zacchevius made the decision to enter the portal, get out of the Auburn football program and enter the portal. So he wasn't a part of the program when Cadillac came in as the interim. But the first week, I think it was, that Hugh Freeze was officially on the job, he makes an appointment to meet with Zacchevius and his family. None of us really know what was said, but what does that tell you about a guy like Hugh Freeze?
I think he saw a chance to retain a talented player, and I'm sure, I don't think you kind of make that announcement that you're going to enter the portal that early unless you're pretty unhappy with what was going on. And there was a few instances of that, and it sounds like amongst the team, some folks were afraid to actually go and ask for a red shirt because they'd be essentially like, "Oh, you got to leave. You got to leave the program." And I know Landon King was certainly a part of that. And it sounds like there's a handful of their Zacchevius may have been, I'm not sure. But the fact that Hugh Freeze kind of called him and said, "Hey, I want you to stay here. There's a lot of roster spots that we need to fill, and you need to be one of them." I think it's telling. And it's clear Zacchevius liked Auburn, or else, he probably wouldn't have stuck it out through the first year of the Harsin era. So the fact that Hugh Freeze was able to come in and pitch, what his vision was to Zacchevius and, have a guy that has SEC experience. I think that's great for Zacchevius, and I think it's great for Hugh Freeze.
So he officially goes back. He accepts Hugh Freeze's offer and gets back into the program. And we've just gone through spring practice, had an A-Day this past Saturday. What are you hearing over there about Zykeivous Walker, and what did you see from him during the times you were able to attend spring practice?
Yeah. So there were 2 practices where I made a point to go over and watch the defensive line at length. And, like I said a moment ago, Tim, I think he's going to be a solid, 6th or 7th defensive lineman in the game type of contributor. And I think there may be game plans where maybe if it's a more run heavy team, he plays a little bit more. We'll certainly see that in the SEC this year when you look at Auburn's schedule. But defensive line coach Jeremy Garrett, he talked about it going into spring. He wanted 8 guys that he could rely on. And I'm pretty confident that Zykeivous Walker has made the cut. I think he's in that top 8. And the way they're scoring this is they're not counting that 4th guy that's on the line of scrimmage, that Jack linebacker. They're not counting him as a defensive lineman. So you look at your starters, it seems like it's Jason Jones, Justin Rogers, and Marcus Harris. But then after that, I think they're going to rotate a bunch of guys. Mosiah Nasili Kite is a transfer from Maryland. Lawrence Johnson's a transfer from Purdue. I think both of those guys are going to get reps. It'll be interesting to see, what happens with Jeffrey Mba and his role. And then I think Zykeivous Walker is right there. And so, if you're going to be a top 8 defensive lineman for Garrett, and then for Coach Roberts, you're gonna play. And Zykeivous Walker is certainly that.
Zach, one of the things that this program has experienced over the last 2 months has been sponsors reaching out to us. And today's program is brought to you by Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance. They're located at 925 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard here in Americus. Go by and see Marty or any of his staff. They'd be happy to sit down with you and discuss your insurance needs. And you can reach out to them at 928-3686. As always, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Zach, as I mentioned, A-Day this past Saturday, I've heard a lot. Been watching your show daily, watch several shows and look at message boards. And I tell you what, I can't figure out. I know it was rainy, it was miserable.
Sure.
How much of that is excuses and how much of it is reality? Give me your thoughts on the total A-Day experience and what did you think?
As far as like the team executing?
Yeah.
Or okay, yeah. I think a lot the fans are blaming it on the weather. The players are not. Every player that I talk to says like, yeah, we didn't do blank well, but because of the weather, but like who cares? Like we're gonna play in situations like that this year, and people talk about the quarterbacks not being able to throw in the rain. It's like, well, what happens when you're down 10 points and it's raining? Like, what are you going to do? And so that to me, I think is a bad talking point that the Auburn family has really, really generated. But the players aren't talking like that. The coaching staff's not talking like that. So I guess it doesn't really actually matter, Tim. But yeah, to me, I think a lot of it looked good. The defense knew that the offense was going to run the ball, and the offense was still able to, kind of find yards outside of the tackles, which is encouraging. And they ultimately tied it up. I didn't think there would be any chance of them, with the whole new scoring system where you start with the defense getting 24 points and can they hold them for 60 minutes? I don't think there was any chance that the offense would win, especially in the rain. And they found a way to do it. So I thought that was pretty cool, and it seemed like a pretty cool moment for the offense when McPherson was able to kind of get that kick at the end to tie it. I thought that was pretty neat. So, but yeah, as far as the rain and stuff like that, I think that's a fan thing. I don't think the players were really too concerned about if it was raining or not. They're worried about execution, and they didn't execute as well.
Hey, I like the 24 points. I know our buddy Charlie Five's not a big fan of that, but I thought it was a pretty neat concept. Zach, let's fast forward a little bit to the fall season now, and knowing what you know about Zykeivous Walker, what do you see his role being this upcoming fall?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's going to be a rotational piece of defensive end, and if they need him in certain packages, they may scoot him inside. And I think what they do in the portal, Tim, I think it matters to some extent. It doesn't seem like defensive line is going to be a position group where they're too eager to add bodies. It seems like they're pretty good there unless there's some guys that leave, and that could help Zacchevius to snap count. It could not. We'll certainly see. And then as far as that goes, I think he'll probably be the second or third defensive end on this team. And I think that's going to get you 30 to 35 snaps a game. That's just my guess. So I think we're going to see a lot more rotating pieces. That's certainly the plan going into the season. I have the starting defensive lineman, Jason Jones, on my show all the time. And he talked about, last year they're playing like 80 snaps a game. And when you're these big guys like Zacchevious or like Jason or like Justin Rogers, I mean, you're having to play that many snaps while also being 300 pounds. That's pretty hard to do, Tim. It's hard to do if you're, a spry 220-pound linebacker. That's tough to do. And so those guys kind of lowering their total snaps but kind of spreading that wealth around, I think it's going to be awesome for everybody involved, especially some of these guys like Zykeivous Walker.
Zach, I know we haven't talked much about this, but Zacchevius has two younger brothers that are highly, highly touted. He's got a rising senior next year, a brother that's a 4-star by all of the scouting services. That's Auburn is one of the top 10 that he has mentioned. Probably the guy that everybody in the country is going after is his 2025 brother, Zayden Walker, who's the number 1 in the state of Georgia on the outside linebacker position. I think one service has got him at 6th overall in the nation. The others got him at 5. How important is it for the coaching staff over there to make sure that Zacchevious has a good year so they have a chance with those two guys?
Yeah, and I don't think Hugh Freeze is as intentional of a recruiter for him to not realize who Zacchevius's brothers were when he called that family back in to try to get him out of the transfer portal. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's part of it, and I think that's something that Auburn hasn't been super great on the last 2 seasons with making sure legacies are happy. And, is that technically a legacy if it's your brother and not a parent? I don't know how all that works, Tim, but obviously the family ties are there, right? The Walker family is used to watching Auburn games and going to campus, so they know what Auburn has to offer. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think it kind of gets you extra visits, I would assume, over the course of their recruiting process to come watch Big Bro play. And, maybe they stay the night at his a few times, kind of get that true Auburn experience. I think that's going to be pretty cool and give Auburn a leg up because the effort's going to be there. And you talk about, the brothers 2025 outside linebacker. I mean, just kind of seeing Keldrick Falk as a true freshman this season, like what that's going to look like. And the fact that he'll be able to play next to him when he's a draft eligible true junior, I think that's going to be a pretty cool opportunity to be able to pitch to a kid that if you're that highly touted, you've got the NFL in your mind. And, Keldrick Falk is a true junior. I'd be shocked if he wasn't dang close to an NFL player at that point. So there's a lot of things Hugh Freeze and this staff are going to be able to pitch to the Walker family. There's no question about it.
Today's program is also being brought to you by our friends Mike and Connie Gurley at the Shred Shed. They provide professional document shredding and do so at affordable prices. You can give Mike and Connie a call at 938-2520. Zach, one of the things I've done with every guest I've had, and I think this is episode 11 or 12, is giving that guest a chance to talk about their family. And it's been interesting to me being friends with you on Facebook and getting the text. I know you and your wife just had the birth of your second child. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. I've got a great wife. Our 5-year anniversary is coming up next month. So that'll be super, super exciting. We've been together, I think, 7 years total. So that's been pretty cool to see. And we've got 2 kids. One's like not even a month old, Tim. So like you said, that's been pretty cool. That's been pretty cool to see. But she puts up with a lot. Kind of allows me to really kind of put a lot of extra time into growing all these things that I've got going on. I've got a million plates in the air, so she really allows me to do all of that. So I've got a great wife. There's no question about it.
Zach, I'm amazed at how much you get done in a day, and I don't know how you schedule all this as far as recording different things. I know a lot of folks in this area are familiar with the Locked On Auburn program just from my conversations with them. But give our audience an idea of the different things that you're in. I know you've got the Auburn Daily where you do a lot of written work, and now you've started something covering the Braves, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is Locked On Auburn, daily Auburn content every, if whenever you pull up your podcast app, odds are there's a new one there. We're also on YouTube, just like this show is. So be sure to check that out. And then, written work, auburndaily.com and bravestoday.com. Of course, that's covering your Atlanta Braves. But both of those sites are hosted with Sports Illustrated. So we're under contract with SI covering Auburn and Atlanta Braves stuff for Sports Illustrated. So pretty cool stuff there as well.
Sounds good. You and I share a mutual friend and a guy that's one of your co-hosts, Daryl Dapprich. He and I have been friends for, well over 30 years. But you two guys have been instrumental in helping a guy that had spent his career in radio and had no idea how the technology of this works. But you've helped me out a lot. Like I said, our program's really grabbed legs here in Southwest Georgia, and it's growing quickly. We appreciate all you've done for us, Zach. We follow you. I want you to know that. Zach, as we wrap this thing up today, I want to end this way. We've gone through A-Day now. We kind of know what we need to get. What I'm hearing you talk about over the last week is really that quarterback room. And we've got, of course, Robbie Ashford. You've got the Georgia kid in Holden Garner. And then we don't know what's going to happen with TJ Finley. There's a lot of speculation he may hit the portal when it opens up. But talk a little bit about that quarterback room.
Yeah, I don't think it's done, Tim. I think Hugh wants to get 2 quarterbacks through the portal. I think he wants to get an older veteran guy, and I think he wants to get a younger guy that's talented enough to come in and compete, but maybe not experienced enough to kind of be a lock for the starting job and just kind of grow within the program and grow within Hugh Freeze's system. That's what I've heard. We'll see if that all transpires. And Tim, I think there's a chance it all happens pretty quick. I think there's a chance it happens over the first 72 hours of the portal being open. So maybe this weekend, maybe early next week, but that'd be certainly fun to see. And then what does that do to the current room when they see two new guys come in? Do you see guys leave? Does TJ Finley leave? Does Holden Geriner stick around if two other guys come in and one of them is maybe a guy that's his class or maybe a hair above him? What does that look like? Of course, Hank Brown, the 3-star quarterback that's I think he's got a lot of spunk. I really like him, but he was committed to,
I think,
the baby goat, Hank Brown. Yeah, that's right. Hank Brown, the baby goat, was committed to Hugh Freeze at Liberty, followed him over to Auburn, and he'll enroll early in the summer as well. So I think the room's going to look totally different. Really, the only guy that can't do anything is Robbie Ashford because he's not on track to graduate, to my understanding and my knowledge, and he's already used his free transfer. So that's really the only guy that's guaranteed to be in the room this fall. And, he may be the starter, but Tim, I don't think he's going to be. I hope he is to some extent. Like if he can put it all together, I mean, his upside is tremendous, but I think there's a long way to go for that happening.
And then we got a guy like Walker White. Walker is a 2024, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And,
2024 guy. And so, we won't be able to see him until next year at the earliest, if he were to play as a true freshman, but we'll see if we're able to get him playing time that early. I don't know if you want him to play as a true freshman. I think some of that depends on who they bring in, over the next few weeks with the portal being open. I think the idea is, you get maybe a 1-year rental, grad transfer type player, and then you get a guy that's maybe a redshirt sophomore so he can learn the system. And so, maybe that's kind of the plan. Then if Walker White comes in and just blows everybody away, you give him the keys, but kind of allow yourself to have options. I don't know if Hugh Freeze really feels like he has options right now.
Zach, it's been great to have you on the program again. Thank you for all the help you've given me and the constructive criticism. I need that, and hopefully we can continue to grow this thing and make it better. But your advice and Daryl's advice has been very much appreciated. Again, thanks for joining me tonight.
Of course, Tim, and listen to what Daryl says way before you listen to what I have to say.
And we want to thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. Make sure and hit the like button and share us on Facebook. And again, tell your friends, go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We passed the 100 subscriber mark this week, and our goal is within the next year or so to get over 1,000. I know you just hit that mark of 10,000. Zach, is that right?
Took a long time, but we got there.
Absolutely. Zach, before we go, tell everybody how they can find you.
Yeah, Locked On Auburn, available wherever you get your podcast in on YouTube. And you can find all of our written work at auburndaily.com and bravestoday.com. Tim, this has been awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So for Zac Blackerby, I'm Tim Estes. Thanks for watching. So long, everybody.